Save the Semantics, episode 270. It is August 27th, 2024. My name is Myra. This is the podcast where I ramble on for a bit about some shit. Boy, do I have some things to talk about today, actually. It's been a rather eventful day, more or less. You know, just been things going on that I wanted to catch up on. I was thinking, like, I'm gonna record. Because usually what I've been doing recently is, like, I'm going to record Monday, like, earlier in the week, and then, later on the weekend. But no, I had to wait a little bit. I was like, you know what, I'm going to hold off, because there's some actual stuff that's coming up that I want to catch up on. Before I get into that, it's been nice. The weather, things in general, been pretty solid for the most part. Despite, me not necessarily having all the time in the world to do the things that I, want to do, but that happens. It's been like weirdly, the last like 2 days in particular have been kind of hot. I'm sort of like, I've mentioned that I've been kind of dreading this period in particular because I've noticed that at least in the last few years or so, like this time kind of leading into September and September too have been some of the hottest periods during the summer. So far it's been okay. I think we've had kind of like our heat waves here and there. But I'm still kind of bracing a little bit. Honestly, it might not even come, but I just like to expect some of those hot conditions just so I can be a little better prepared and not like accidentally wear a sweater when it's like 90 degrees or something like that. You know how that goes when you it's like you plan to go out and you're like, you know what, it's good to be prepared, but then you over prepare on your outerwear and you just put on way too much shit, and now you have to carry that around. You have to lug it around. You're like, I don't have like a locker where I can put this, I should have left it in my car, but I can't go back to my car. It's all the way over there. So it's a bit of a dilemma. You know what I mean? It's not hot. It's not hot enough for it to be sweater weather yet. You know what I mean? I think that's why I'm not the biggest fan of like right now. One, because it is still hot and summer's not my favorite time of the year. It's hot, and it continues to get hot, unfortunately. But the other thing that I don't like is sort of like this in-between period when it's going into the fall. But if it's like at nighttime and you happen to be going out at nighttime, you have to be prepared and carry around a sweater or, something on top. But it's like, okay, but in most instances, you don't really need to do that because it's not too hot yet. But in some cases, it is actually cold, and you're like, fuck, I should have brought something. You know what I mean? Does that make any sense? But yeah, it's sort of like the transitionary period of going from this hot kind of weather to where it does cool down and it gets nice, at least over here. Is kind of in effect. But you get used to it. You get used to it. Anyways, yeah, I've been, not too much going on in my life necessarily, but, I do have something that I do want to talk about, which is the direct that happened today. It's sort of like a hybrid kind of showcase, where, so they actually combined two of like the showcases from, it was like the indie showcase and then like they did like a partner direct for Nintendo, basically, right? First off, I was already like correct. I was correct on the front that there wasn't going to be a September direct. I was right on that. The thing that I was incorrect was, or rather I didn't guess correctly, was that there actually was a direct earlier on, which happened today, August 27th, which I did not anticipate, you know what I mean? And that's good. I think, that's sort of based on what other people have been talking about. This kind of does imply a little bit that there might be another announcement relating to Switch 2, new hardware, that kind of thing. Maybe like September, October, that timing, based on, speculation and whatnot. So that's exciting, you know what I mean? And kind of based on what we saw from today, I think this sort of showcase, this sort of double showcase, if you want to call it that, was what I kind of expected what the June Direct was going to be, which was going to be remakes and indies, remasters, older ports of games. Like, that's kind of what I was anticipating the last Direct to be, but it turned out to kind of be more in line with this one, right? I think that the June Direct sort of softened the blow of this one, and it wasn't bad by any means. There's actually quite a lot of things in this showcase that I'm looking forward to personally, but I understand with sort of the wider audience that not a lot of it is going to resonate. There were not like there were like really no big games that really showed up here. I think they really, they did that in the last Direct. They handled that fine, because I think that's considered to be one of the better presentations that they had over the years with the Nintendo Direct. So I think that they sort of putting that up front before this one, I think makes a lot of sense, because this one, while I personally did have a lot of things that I am looking forward to, and I think appeals to me, it's not it's just not enough to like sustain excitement from maybe a casual audience, you know what I mean? There's just, there's the older games, and there's ports of games that have not been, included on modern systems and that kind of thing. So it's not as exciting for most people, and that's fine. But regardless of that, there are some things that popped up on here that did catch my attention. That's games that I'm actually considering getting in the future. So with the indie showcase, it was most things on there. I'm probably not going to play. I'm not super interested in. The very first thing that they did show, and I missed. I was planning on, because what I did for previous Directs is that I would like get up at the time that they would show this, which is usually like 7 o'clock or 6 o'clock or that kind of thing. The whole thing started at 7 for me, but I missed it. I kind of, I technically overslept, if you want to call it that, but I missed like the majority of the presentation. So I just kind of went back and went on the playback and watched it myself. I was kind of skimming over, parts of the indie Direct to see if there's really anything interesting. I actually missed this the first time around. So the first thing they showed was actually an update for Balatro. And it's not the update that I was, thinking, which is the big update coming out next year. They already sort of announced it. But with this, it's like a collaboration. So it's really minor. The only changes that are coming with this update are that the cards that you get to play are customizable to the games that that Balatro is collaborating with, which included The Witcher, Among Us, Vampire Survivors, and what was the other one? There was one more. I forgot what the other one was, but there were, these games. It was really and Dave the Diver. So it was funny that it was just like, oh, is this like a new game mode? Not really. I think you just play using different card decks. I think the music changes and that kind of thing, which is pretty cool. I think I might try that out. I'll check it out. later tonight if I have some time, just to see how it goes. I haven't really played Balatro in a little bit, so it might be, yeah, it might be cool to kind of get back into it if it, provides a little change in like the atmosphere and whatnot. But I it's cool. I think it's cool that there's like these little twinges here and there. It's a free update, so you don't have to purchase anything else, which is cool. And then based on what we've heard, it's going to be a free update next year as well for whatever the big like gameplay update is going to be, which is really exciting, and that's something that I'm looking forward to. Along with all the other games that I still kind of have on my list. But yeah, nice little update there. Yeah, other than that, like the indie showcase didn't really show anything like that really interested me. There was that like Neva game, which was made by the creators of Greece, which I have not played. It's a very artistic kind of indie game. And I mean, it's like, it could be one of those games, Greece. It could be one of those games where, it's sort of like the in-between game, like the short game, because apparently you can beat that in like a few hours. So, that might be perfect for, if I need something to kind of change it up from what I've been playing recently, or just like RPGs in general. And then the art style for this game, for Neva, looks gorgeous. It looks beautiful. There were some like sequences they were showing in the trailer that kind of reminded me a little bit of like Princess Mononoke, just sort of like the black gooey creatures that were being shown. So that was interesting. It feels like it might have been inspired by it a little bit. I'm just getting that kind of sense, so it could be that could be something later down the line. That could be something interesting that I might pick up. I do really like to try, different genres and that kind of thing. I think, more recently I've been really open to just trying different things and seeing if it's like my cup of tea and whatnot. And I think, whatever this studio is putting out is kind of an indication of like, this, like a specific art style, a specific vision of what, of just, specific direction that they got going for. It's really nice. It's really cool. And, I do want to try it out. I do want to try out this, and I do want to try out Greece. If I ever do find the time, and maybe it could just be like something that I pick up in between. So, that could be cool. Other than that, I think there was like Pizza Tower, which is a game that came out earlier this year or last year. Not something that really is interesting to me, like that kind of platformer. But it's cool because it was, pretty critically acclaimed and that sort of thing. It's cool that it got a Switch port, out today. Pretty crazy. Nice little shadow drop there. But yeah, from the indie stuff, some interesting things, but again, nothing really that caught my attention personally. All right, let's talk about what was in the partner direct. So essentially, with the partner direct, it are things that are not first parties, so third parties. So nothing published by, or nothing that is developed by Nintendo Studios themselves, is sort of presented in this showcase. And again, I think it was like I think having it be considered a partner showcase versus like a regular direct probably helped in sort of like the image of it. It helped that it wasn't like, because like if you did show it as like a regular direct, there's going to be some expectations, and I think following up that June direct is probably going to be pretty difficult considering just the lineup they had on there. So the way they sort of framed it, I think it helped to give it a bit more of a image where it not lower your expectations, but to sort of give you, just be like, okay, don't expect something crazy. And they always have to preface recently, which I think is really funny, talking about, hey, listen, there's not going to be Switch 2 here, all right? There's nothing of the successor, nothing of the Switch successor here. So shut up. They have to put that message out there. I mean, people are still going to say something about it, but I do think it is funny that they have to sort of include that for some of their recent presentation. So I kind of like skimmed through the the showcase for both, like the entirety of it, and there's a couple of things that I missed that I saw the announcement basically afterwards because it wasn't really, I didn't really want to watch the whole thing, and honestly I'm kind of glad that I did it because it just wasn't like the most, it didn't have everything, so it wasn't like the most exciting thing ever. So but again, there were some things that popped up. One of them, we finally got a release date for the Suikoden remasters, which I was like, dude, where are these? They announced these like more than a year ago, and Konami has just been silent about them. And part of me was like, oh god, are we gonna have like another situation where they announced the game way too early? And maybe in some instances they did, but they announced and they confirmed that the game is going to come out on in March of 2025, which is nice. It's good. I know some people are maybe like, it's a little far out. Honestly, for me, and I've said this before, I still have so many other things on my plate that I want to play through. So having that a little farther in the future, fine by me. That'll be like a 2025 game for me. That's perfect. I I think that, this is something that I've kind of seen recently. I know that Konami has sort of like a bad, has sort of had like a, questionable reputation in the industry just regarding, some things with like with like Metal Gear and the relationship with Hideo Kojima and how that didn't work out. But I think on the front of preservation and bringing, modern game, or bringing their older games to modern systems, I feel like it feels like they've done like a pretty good job on that front. They've brought forward kind of the remasters of the first three Metal Gear Solid games. I don't know how well they ran on the Switch. Apparently it wasn't like the best, but and they're also like remaking, Silent Hill and that kind of thing. So I think that there are things happening that could be good. And I think it's sort of, I'm not trying to like, be like, Konami is the best. No, that's not what I'm saying. I think that there's been maybe a change of like leadership and that sort of thing that has led to, I don't know, more presence in gaming as of late. And maybe, hopefully that's like an indication that there's other games, newer games that they're going to put out. If it means they're also just going to continue to bring forward these older titles, it's fine. I'm fine with that. Like the Metal Gear games, that might be something that I have the original Metal Gear Solid on PS1, a Japanese version of it. I never played it. I just didn't find the time to play it. And I'll most likely be playing, the one with like the localized version of it, and the translated version of it. But there's still, those are ones that I could potentially see myself playing in the future if I don't, if I've kind of gone through all the other games that I still have, right? So I think it's just cool to see. It's cool to see that there are these, older games that, that no longer have like a physical. I mean, if there are physical versions of, the PS1 games, they're gonna be expensive as hell on eBay. Like, it's super difficult to get. So to have these on modern systems available for, players like myself, to take a look at, I think is a good thing. You know what I mean? There's things that you can argue regarding pricing and whether it's, I don't know, ethical to price a older game you know, to a certain point. But I think for the most part, I think it feels like they've been sort of reasonable. And I mean, if you look at some things like Final Fantasy X, especially, you know, having played that earlier this year, and not too long ago, I think just having those available is a huge thing. It's huge. And a couple of the other games that I'm going to talk about kind of lend itself to that argument that, hey, you know, bringing these older games to newer audiences like myself is really kind of a benefit, because then it really gets you into whatever series there is that exists and has like a huge history and that kind of thing. And I really think there's, you know, obviously the sales more likely than not will indicate whether a company, you know, will put in the effort to remaster or remake something. But I feel like in a lot of cases for these kind of beloved games, there is like a pretty big argument to be made that, hey, listen, there are people that have already played the game that want to play it again in, you know, like a high definition version. And there's new players like myself that have never played the game, that want to know what the buzz is about, you know? So I think that, you know, I think there is a lot to be criticized in terms of game output, game production output, and sort of relying potentially on old media to support your system, and, you know, the pricing of that and everything, when it comes to sort of, you know, those terms. But I find myself as someone who has, you know, missed out on some stuff and is kind of catching up on some of the older games out there. I think there's a lot to really appreciate when it comes to games that do come back and are reintroduced again to the public. And I do want to just reiterate again, like, I think really the biggest issue when it comes to that is just the pricing of these games, like, depending on, you know, what it is that they're remastering or whatever. I think one that really kind of sticks out in recent memory that can definitely be heavily criticized, and that's coming out later next year, is Donkey Kong Country Returns, which I think is slated to be like $60, which I think is ludicrous. I think that is ridiculous of a price for a Wii game. Like, that's just way too much. And it's like, they can price it at that because people are gonna buy it. I'm one of the people who is deterred from that price. Like, I'm not gonna buy something if it is at that level, you know what I mean? It's just that, like, I don't know, is it worthwhile? Here's another thing. Here's like another argument. And I know I want to talk about the games that did show up in today's presentation, but I am curious if for Nintendo, if it's worthwhile to keep the price as high as it is and not offer any discounts, because they know that their player base will buy it regardless. You know what I mean? Like, is it worthwhile to do that? Are the sales from that worthwhile to keep that? Like, wouldn't it be more worth it, like, later down the line, years down the line, to provide discounts so that more people could potentially buy it? I don't know. It's you know, whatever pricing models, you know, cost benefit analysis that they're running over there, you know, it's probably working to some extent. But it's just like, it is frustrating for myself, where it's just like, dude, I'm not, that's just way too much, like, for like an older game like that. I'm just gonna have to pass. Like, it's just way too much. So, anyway, it's just something that I've been kind of thinking about, you know what I mean? Because I think that it is, gaming can be kind of expensive. And, you know, for the longest time, and I still kind of follow that philosophy, it's where it's like, if I don't, you know, even if I could buy like a new system, like a PS5 or an Xbox Series or a new gaming computer. It's like, is it worth it to spend a decent chunk of money to get those so that I can play something else? It's like when I can more or less spend that time with what I currently have. You know what I mean? It's just it's kind of difficult, and for people who maybe don't have like the funds to get games, it's difficult to like get into it. You know what I mean? So it's tricky, and I I think that with Nintendo and how they go about it, it's like, yes, the Switch and their consoles are technically on the cheaper side, which is good, lower point of entry, but also the games just are more expensive or at the same market price as others as well. You know what I mean? I still think that the $70 price tag for Tears of the Kingdom was still kind of ridiculous. Like, they really didn't need to do that. They probably would have sold more, honestly, if they didn't price it so high. So it's just like, I don't know. There's a lot to kind of to dig into there, but that's just kind of what I've been thinking about as with these like presentations, and as we kind of go into the next generation. Anyways, let's talk about some of the other games that showed up. So Castlevania, there's a DS Castlevania collection that was announced, and that they basically released today. I've heard great things about the Castlevania games, at least for DS. I heard those ones are really good. I remember reading about them just like a long time ago, back when I was subscribed to Nintendo Power. I think I think there was like some articles about those games that I remember seeing, and it's I've played games sort of in kind of the vein of like a 2D platformer, quote unquote Metroidvania. And I mean, Castlevania really just falls under that exactly because it is Castlevania, but kind of action platformer games. Like really the only ones that I've played are like Hollow Knight, and that's kind of it. I'm not super well versed in that genre of games. But if, it's possible that I might give it a shot, and see what's up. $25 for those three. See, that's a good price point for like older games, and like a package deal. That's a really good deal. So I feel like that kind of price is pretty reasonable for three full-on games. I think there's like one more game included in that collection as well, like a side game. But that's really cool. I think that for myself, I was never super interested in Castlevania in the past. I remember seeing reviews. I remember reading like IGN stuff reviews as like Castlevania, whichever one of the DS games, and seeing that it had like a good review and stuff. I was like, oh, maybe I'll consider it in the future. But this could be the opportunity for me to get into the series, and maybe this particular game collection, and give it a shot and see how I feel about it, because it is considered kind of the legacy franchises that has existed since the NES days. So it might be worthwhile just to give it a shot and see kind of where all of this inspiration from these kind of indie titles and all of these other games that inspired it came from. So cool stuff. That was a pretty nice one to see. Another one, this one was like this was like disrespectfully short, and I was reading into it as to why it was the case. This was for Trails in the Sky, the first one, the first story, or whatever it was called. So the very first one, it looks like it's been remastered, which is really cool. I am someone, and I don't remember if I've talked about it on here, but it's a series that I am interested in and also dreading getting into. One, because there are like 15 games in the series, and it just keeps on going. It's one of those. It's like the One Piece of games. Like, I will never watch One Piece. You know what I mean? I just won't. It's just too much. And I kind of feel similar about Trails in a way. It just, the way the fans talk about it being this like epic spawn and saga of just all these interconnected stories. I'm like, that's a lot, man. That seems like too much. However, I am willing to give it a shot. At least try the first game and see how that goes. Because I've heard great things about it, you know what I mean? And if I am interested, then that kind of gives me incentive to check out the rest of the series, you know what I mean? I think it's like, you know, the way people talked about the Trail series, it's like, oh, you could start here. This is like a decent entry point, but you might, you know, you could also start here, or you could start here. You could actually play the newest game in the series, and you won't understand any of the backstory for the characters, but it's like a one-off story, even though it's connected in a lot of ways. So like, this character is from this game, and this character is from the other game. This one is from like the first two games. He was actually the main character from the Crossspell series, and from the Trails in the Sky series, and now they're in this game. But you don't really need to know that, because this is like a self-contained, like, it's like, dude, I can't, you know, like, that's too much like back story information. Like, it just is like, I can't, you know what I mean? It's like, I'm getting into the series, the 15th game in the series, and regardless of what people say, and you know, I understand they're coming from a good place of like, listen, if you're interested in the series, this could be somewhere that you could start if you don't have access to the older games. But still, it's just too much, in my opinion. It's like way too much to think about. It's like, oh, but you didn't get this Easter egg because this was actually a reference to Cold Steel. I'm like, that's too much. So I'm just gonna listen. I'm very happy to hear that the very first game is being remastered, because that's like where it all started. I'm like, okay, let's see what it's about, man. I want to see if the game, you know, can kind of back up the talk of what the fans are kind of propping it up to be. You know what I mean? Which is like this crazy, just, you know, decades of just building up of you know, storylines and character development and whatnot. So we'll see. You know, I've heard good things about it. It's coming out next year. They had like a 1-minute preview of this, or a 1-minute trailer of it in the Japanese Direct, 10 seconds of it in the kind of the American, you know, Western one. And I was looking into, I'm like, dude, dude, this is like huge news I mean, like, it's big news for, you know, RPG fans like myself. But my what I understood after kind of, you know, reading up on it a little bit is that for these like specific slots in the Direct, those are paid for by, you know, the publishers of these games. So if you have EA, you know, paying top bill to Nintendo to showcase one of their whatever, you know, EA Sports games, that's probably going to get it to the front, as opposed to, you know, something by Falcom. Like, Falcom is great, you know, they make great games, but they don't have, it's just not the same. It's not the same, like, presence, you know what I mean? Some companies just are able to shell out a little bit more in order to get their games noticed, even if the you know, quality of the game isn't great. But yeah, it's like, it was so like, I was like, dude, what? That's like huge news. Like, if they had shown more of that in the American trailer, I would have been like, dude, this is like a great Direct, you know what I mean? And I still think it was like a solid one, but it just didn't get the same attention. It didn't get the attention it deserved, in my opinion. But it's great, man. There's another one right there. for next year. You know, you got Suikoden. I got, the Trails series that I'm, depending on how I feel about, Trails in the Sky. It could be something else that I could potentially get into. And from my understanding and from fan reception and whatnot, and kind of some videos that I've seen in the past, they say, like, if you are a fan of something like Xenoblade or Final Fantasy, that kind of thing, this could be right up your alley. So look, man, that's some high praise. So I'm excited. I'm excited to check it out in the future. Some other things, they showed another trailer for Dragon Quest III, which is cool. They essentially, the main thing they showed was, like, you can, like, customize your characters and have them wear specific, like, costumes and that kind of thing. And you can also change their voice too, which is interesting. I'm curious as to how they're going to integrate that in the game. If your characters are going to have, lines of dialogue and that kind of thing. Because I don't really know, outside of it being part of the Lotto trilogy, or the Erdrick trilogy, which is in the English name. I'm curious if, like, the characters in this game are, like, they have their own, like, personalities and whatnot. Because, like, if you play the very first Dragon Quest, it's like you're just, like, kind of insert, character. So I'm interested. I'm curious about what the character interactions are going to be like. There's also, like, a new class that's like a monster wrangling class, which they imply that you can, like, scout and capture monsters, which I don't know. It could be the case where you could recruit monsters to your team, or you capture them and then have them battle in, like, a coliseum, similar to Dragon Quest VIII or some of the other games that do have that feature. The monster capturing thing, to have them in your party, would be kind of akin to Dragon Quest V, and then obviously Dragon Quest Monsters. But we'll see. I think I'm leaning towards it being more of a capture them and have them fight in a coliseum kind of thing, because that feels a bit more. It feels easier to do that than to, I don't know, not easier, but it makes more sense and kind of more in line with just sort of what the update would be like. You know what I mean? Because, like, if you do have monsters in your party, is that too much of a departure from the original game? I don't know. Whatever. But that's cool. That makes me more excited to play the game, which is coming out in November. So pretty close. Yeah, pretty close. Again, I still have many games that. We got Zelda coming up next month. Like, it's good stuff. We got a nice little run going on. I accidentally hit the stop button. Anyways, but there's just a lot of stuff that we have to look forward to, including what they kind of ended the show with, which I personally got really excited for. Was Yakuza. It was, like, the first game, the remastered first game. I've talked about this. I've said that I've been wanting to get into the Yakuza series, but none of it is available on Switch. There's a conversation a while back about, I think one of the developers' CEO saying, like, the Switch is for, like, babies. Which, listen, I get it. There's a lot of Mario, a lot of baby games on here. I get it. I totally get it. But there's also M-rated games. There's Nier. There's The Witcher. There's a lot of other stuff on there. So I get the perception, But no, there's listen. I am someone who's been wanting to play the Yakuza games for a very long time. So I was happy to see it show up. I was like, dude, finally, man. Is it too little, too late? No, I don't think so. It appears that, I forgot what the release date was. They said October, I think. So that timing is pretty close. That's pretty good, Is it something that I'm gonna get this year? I don't know. It just depends on, what I'm feeling. I think if it is if I am if I am still playing like uh, Echoes of Wisdom at that time, I might pass. But that's cool. I was very happy to see that. Honestly, I think that that being kind of the closer. It's not, again, it's not really the most exciting because it is a pretty old game, but that kind of rounding it off, it's like, dude, this is good, man, and hopefully this opens the door for Sega to continue to port some of their older games, the older games in the Yakuza series, from like a Dragon series, because I've really wanted to get into them. I've heard only good things, so it seems like this is like the first game. From what I've heard, Yakuza 0 is sort of like the best entry point because it's like a prequel of the first game, and it does a better job of like connecting the stories and that kind of thing. I'm okay just like picking up this first one, and getting into this. I think just having getting a taste of what what these games are like will sort of invite me or sort of incentivize me to looking into the rest of the series. Hopefully, some of those older games do get ported eventually, or whatever. Maybe it's like maybe that'll push me to buy a PlayStation. But it's good. It's good stuff. I'm very. I think that regardless of it is very heavy on remakes and remasters and that kind of thing, and those are the things that I am excited for from this presentation. But I think overall it was like solid. I think it was like a solid, you know, solid overall from combining the indie world slash direct and the partner direct. I think that was like a nice little combination there. I felt that because there weren't any first party games, it wasn't going to be to the same level as before. But this gets some really good stuff on here. Some really good stuff on here, and I'm excited to get into at least, I don't know, probably some of them in the near future. Of course, Dragon Quest, that's going to be like a day one purchase for me. So yeah, a lot of things to be really excited, continue to be kind of excited for. I was already excited, and then I just kind of continue to be excited for the things that do come out this year and then early next year. But yeah, it was a nice little surprise. There was some rumblings happening about like a direct. I just did not expect it to come up so soon. And I want to sort of say again, like, I think this kind of gives us a bit of an indication that of the direction, like a real, sense of the direction that Nintendo is going in terms of releasing, or, giving a kind of an announcement for Switch 2 or whatever it's going to be called. It's sort of like, there's kind of like this space where, from this point on, from now to like the end of the year, we have games still left for me, I'm there's plenty for me to get into, but for just kind of the overall Switch audience in general, nice little kind of collection of stuff available, but nothing necessarily too crazy outside of maybe Zelda. Prime 4, Metroid Prime 4, that's going to be for next year, and I think I'm sort of on the same page with a lot of other people where it's going to be kind of a cross-gen, or cross-gen game where it's going to be on the Switch and then also on the Switch 2. So a lot to kind of look forward to. This showcase was a nice little treat to get kind of earlier in the week. I think I'll check out the Balatro update, just see how that goes. Seems like it's a nice little touch, and I did start. Okay, I'll get into this maybe later this weekend. I started. I'm like halfway, a little less than halfway through the 4th season of Attack on Titan. Good stuff. Nice to be back on the Attack on Titan train and kind of rounding that off. And I'll maybe talk about that later this weekend as I don't know if I'm gonna finish it, but I'll probably make some nice progress in the last season. So I'll be talking about that. But yeah, I'll leave it off at there. I'll leave it off for now. Do some more catch up later this weekend. Talk about some more stuff. All right, it is August 30th, 2024. Is it the end of the month? Is today the last day of the month? No, it's not. Tomorrow is. Whenever I think about how many days there are in a month, I know for sure, like February is like, it's either 28 or 29. That's like an easy one. Every other month, I have no idea. It's either 30 or 31. And it's not even that hard to remember, honestly. There's only 12 months. Like, it could be pretty easy to try to, try to get it. But no, it's difficult. I always forget. I always forget which date or how many number of days there are in a month. Anyways, it's been an alright week. It's been okay. A little tired right now, a little tuckered out. But I've had a decent week, I'd say. I think it sort of helps, earlier on this week when I did record on Tuesday, it was sort of highlighted just kind of the direct news and all of the new game announcements and releases and that kind of thing. That was kind of fun. That was like a sort of fun thing. We are getting some more releases kind of going into the next month. Like next month is going to be a pretty big month. Obviously, in my, what I'm looking forward to is Zelda and that kind of thing. But there are other things that are going to be popping up that have seemed to garnered a good amount of excitement from various fans of various consoles and that kind of thing. But yeah, there's a lot going on these next couple of months in terms of gaming and that kind of thing. So it's there's a lot to kind of look forward to on that front. I've been sort of, I've been kind of with the time that I've had, I've kind of looked at sort of the slate of what the rest of the year looks like as I kind of have been, and thinking about what I most likely will be picking up, and aside from the obvious, I think I was also looking back at the direct from a couple of years ago. What am I talking about? A couple months ago. Because that one was kind of crazy as I remember kind of, talking about that. Some of those games are sort of slated to come through, by the end of the year. And just sort of looking at it from a kind of a broad point of view in terms of like, okay, obviously I know which games I will be prioritizing in terms of what I'm actually going to get. And I also don't want to go overboard too much in terms of, going around and picking games and that sort of thing. I tend, most of the time, when I do purchase something, I do want to play it as soon as I can, more recently, kind of in the past year or a couple of years, I have picked up games at a discount and then, sort of put them on my quote-unquote shelf library of games so that I'll play through those a little later when I do have some time. But I've found that it is satisfying when you're able to get a game and then buy that or just play that when, either on release or just like when you want to buy it, you know what I mean? I just think that's, I don't know, it's just been fun to, instead of like, okay, it's in the back of my mind, am I gonna get around to it? It's just kind of what I've found to be, I don't know, it's kind of lended itself to be a more satisfying kind of experience going into playing the game, you know what I mean? I know it's so, it's such a minor thing, but I think that sort of sitting on a game and being like, oh, okay, maybe I'll get around to this sometime. It's a little intuitive. I don't know if that makes any sense whatsoever. But just when I have been like on a whim, and I've talked about this before, games that I've just kind of bought on a whim because it sounded interesting and I was just like, you know what, I'm gonna buy it. Those have been some really fun. Those have been just I've found those games, and just that experience in general just to be great. I think I can pinpoint to like Balatro this year. It's either like I never I need to like figure out whoever the developer is, like they need to sort out how you pronounce the name, because it's either Balatro or Balatro. I've been saying Balatro because it sounds a little better, but he needs to come out and just confirm whether it's one way or the other. Like that game I just bought, I'm like, yeah, screw it, I'm gonna try it out because that's right up my alley, and it was right up my alley. It was perfect. I put in a ton of hours into that this year. So it's just those kinds of things where it's just it's if something garners my interest, whether it's like an indie game, I think it also should be sort of on the reasonable end. I did kind of buy Mario Wonder on a whim too, but that was kind of premeditated as well. I knew about the game going into it, and I was just like, you know what, I'm just gonna get into it. Screw it. I've never been the biggest Mario platformer guy, but I love that game. That game was a lot of fun. So those instances where it's just like, I intend to play this right now. That's been really nice. And I just like knowing that you have like, a game waiting for you that you've been looking forward to playing. It's just a nice feeling, I have not had the time, unfortunately, to really make too much progress in the games that I have, games, Unicorn Overlord, that kind of thing. So I maybe this weekend we'll see. But I did. So after this Tuesday's Direct, which again was the indie showcase, and then the partner Direct, I did end up. I went back to Balatro just for like a quick second to see kind of what the updates were about. It's pretty minimal. I was a little disappointed because I thought there was going to be like different themes and that kind of thing, where maybe they were, the game itself was going to provide, the music from the different games that it was, crossing over with. But the only difference really was that the face cards were changed the face cards were changed to the various characters from the games, The Witcher, Among Us, Dave the Diver, and Vampire Survivors. So it was like it's very minimal. It's super. You don't even really notice it, to be honest. So it was a little disappointing. I thought that like the whole card layout, the cards, and then also the theme would change. I thought it would be a bit more significant of an update, and it's really nothing. Like, it's literally like 3 cards that change. It's just the face cards that changed into the updated ones. So it was just like, okay, all right. I mean, I think for the time being, and I maybe I'll find myself wanting to dive back into Balatro in the future, but for the time being, I think I feel satisfied with the game. I think I've done, I've gotten to like the gold tier for one of the card decks, and that's kind of like the highest that you can go for each deck. I didn't clear out all of the challenges, so that's still there if I want to do that. But for the most part, I think I am pretty satisfied with the game. So until like next year, or maybe just like on the offhand chance that I have sort of this inkling, this kind of want to play the game, I'm probably going to be waiting until the update to really get back into the game next year. That does have me excited. I am looking forward to seeing kind of what kind of updates are included with next year. So yeah, that's probably kind of where I am with Balatro for the time being. It's like a cute, the cute little thing that they've added, but outside of that, it really is not like, it's not really significant at all. You know what I mean? But yeah, that's just kind of where I'm at right now. So I actually did. Speaking of going back to games, I've gone back to Risk of Rain 2. I heard there was like a DLC update. There's some controversy, if you want to call it that, that's been happening with that game, in particular in the way in which Gearbox, which is the publishing company, has handled the release of the DLC. Apparently something got messed up. I haven't really looked too much into it, but the performance of the DLC and whatever is sort of messed up. Anyways, I was just like, oh yeah, if I remember, I haven't played and I haven't really gone back into Risk of Rain in a long time, so I was like, you know what, I'm just gonna do a run. I got sucked in immediately into I did like one run, and each run takes quite a long time. Can go up to, I mean, it depends on how far you can get into it, how far you can try to complete a run, but I don't know. I think it was maybe like half an hour that I was going at it. I've never, completed a run before, so I still have that on my plate with that game. But I just got really into it. It is one of those things where I think, unlike certain games, certain roguelite games, it's a little more difficult to kind of continue going unless you're really wanting to. I think if you make it into over 30 minutes for a run, it is a little difficult. It's like discouraging when you do die and have to start over. You're like, damn, I put in all this time, It is really fun, and the combat can be pretty satisfying. But I think that because of how much time you do drop in, it can be a little discouraging when you lose that progress and have to start from the beginning again. I think that kind of applies to a lot of roguelike games. I think that might deter some people from getting into them. That's sort of continuing the discussion that I had before, where just talking about why certain people might not be into it. I think there is like a level to it where it's like, if you're not able to save the progress that you've made in a game, it's a little difficult to incentivize you to keep going. Like, you want to see your character get stronger, and in some cases, in most games, like, stay stronger too, right? Like, if there's like a leveling up system of developing your stats and your skills and that kind of thing. With rogue like games, it's difficult to there aren't, other than some cases like maybe Hades, where you are actually able to upgrade your character. A lot of them, you are just kind of like, you just gotta start from the beginning. Just get good. That's kind of what the drive is, right? Getting better and hopefully obtaining the best passive abilities and that kind of thing, so you can finally reach the end of a run. And then you try that again with another character and another character. So there's just varying reasons and varying kind of gaming styles that I think can apply. And I just, for some reason, this style of game has really clicked with me, and as it has clicked with a lot of other people as well. It's just kind of funny because, honestly, if I really think about it, this type of game is really not something that I have traditionally found to be entertaining or exciting, because as I've talked about before, I've grown up and played through primarily RPGs and JRPGs and that kind of thing, where progression is very much tied to your character's growth and also tied to the story as well, right? It's sort of implied, and this isn't always the case, but it's sort of implied that as you progress through the story, your character gets stronger. And I know there are different variations of that, there are different leveling systems and that sort of thing, but that is sort of like, you know, in my mind, like that's kind of what has been built in. And with like roguelike games, that whole concept is sort of like swept. You know, it's kind of like not undercut, but it's just, you know, flip it on its head a little bit, right? It's like actually you don't progress at all. Like you progress for this specific moment in time, but after this is done, after you die, you go back, you start again. And it's tough, man. It's tough. I think that nowadays, with the success of games, you know, like the FromSoft games, Elden Ring, I think these more challenging games, where there is like a very clear focus on your ability to get better at the game, I think is emphasized, and I think a lot of players have really gotten drawn to that. You know what I mean? Of course, there are, you know, just the insane variety of games that there are out there. I think provides so much more experience in terms of just like the types of genres that people can get into, which myself I've been like, yeah, you know, I've talked about just dabbling in just different types of games here and there. I think that just this there's this kind of like draw to like challenge you as like the player to just kind of continue moving forward and just keep trying again and again, whether it's with a boss in Elden Ring or to try another run in Hades. Like there's just a lot of, I don't know, it's kind of interesting seeing what has kind of become popular in a lot of ways, right? You know, the whole concept of like a rogue like game is not anything new, but I just think that there's been just this very clear surgence of these types of games and these types of models, because players like myself included, I have just really gotten drawn into that style of a game. So I don't know, it's just interesting. There's like, I think there's like both I don't know, it's like both these games are like fun, and they've a lot of them have just gotten better and better, but also on top of that there's probably like some kind of psychological reason as to why these types of games kind of draw you in as a player. There's just like a certain part of your brain that's just kind of like, nah, I gotta do another one. No, I gotta try to beat this boss again, or try to beat him again, right? There's just like a part of you that's like, if I don't get through this obstacle, I will not feel satisfied, right? So I think there's kind of there's like a part of that kind of that part of your brain that, I don't know, quote unquote activates, or just you know, works with these types of games. You know, it's like there's that. There's also like gotcha games, right? In the kind of the mobile field, you have, you know, you want to try to get like a certain character, or you want to get a certain weapon, and you have to, I mean, that's gambling, right? So that kind of part of your brain, that's like a different thing entirely. But you know what I mean? There's certain parts of your brains that just kind of that just like the sensation of being able to try to get past like an obstacle or whatever. I don't know. It's just kind of interesting to think about, because really, the essence, the idea of, you know, these most difficult games and roguelike games just boils down to the same thing. It's just like you're really just trying to beat something, right? You're really trying to get to the end of something, but you're just kind of going at it again and again until you get past it. So I don't know. It's I think it is interesting that so much of these have become as popular as it has. You know, the weird thing I think I did notice is sort of going back to Risk of Rain 2. It is weird. I don't know if this has anything to do with the issues that have appeared with the recent Risk of Rain 2 like DLC, which I haven't played yet. I don't know if I am gonna play it, based on the current response to it. I'll probably hold off until things get fixed. I mean, I'm probably not, until I've beat the game, quote unquote, or complete a run. I'll probably hold off on playing the DLC. But I've noticed something kind of weird, and maybe it's just an issue with the version that I'm playing. Maybe there's like a bug that's happening where the music just like stops playing, and I have the music turned on, and it just in the middle of in like the stage, it's just silent, and I'm like, I can't just play this without the music. The music is like one of the best parts of the game. The soundtrack to this game is awesome. It's like if you're getting your ass kicked, at least it's in style, and you got something groovy going on. It's just not the same without the music. So I don't know. Hopefully that gets fixed, or maybe it's just like an issue with my version. I have no idea, but it's like if I'm not listening to this, I'll just listen to something else. But I mean, what's kind of the point? The big draw is the soundtrack, and I do want to listen to it. So it's kind of unfortunate that I've had some issues kind of recently when doing those runs. Again, hopefully that gets updated. Some other gaming stuff. I honestly, I feel like I could have like waited until talking about some of the direct news. So the Yakuza Kiwami game that is coming out next month, $20. It's pretty good. That's a good deal. That honestly might make me want to buy the game earlier on, like this year. You know what I mean? I mean, it's possible. I might just like. It's possible the game might even get discounted kind of earlier on, considering it's already at such a low price point. $20 though, I'm in. Like that's a good, that's a pretty good deal, I feel, for an older game, but for a game that deserves to get a release on this console, right? That we've been waiting for this franchise to make its way onto Switch. So that makes me pretty happy. And just knowing that is going to be there, and it's at a really reasonable price. Again, as I said before, oftentimes me just not wanting to buy things. I mean, there's like a big reason for most people, but there's like certain games where it's just like I just can't justify buying this right now. I just it's a bit too much. But that $20 price point is really not too bad. Again, kind of going back onto what I was discussing on Tuesday, the Castlevania collection, $25. That's also $25. And so there's a couple of these things out there. One, Castlevania is already out, and then the Yakuza game is going to be out later. Where there's like other things that I could see myself picking up in between kind of the big purchases of a Zelda, of a Dragon Quest, right? I think those ones, it's possible I might not even really have to, wait too long until the end of the year. Because Dragon Quest is coming out in November, I believe. So it might be one of those instances where one of those games might like hold me over until Dragon Quest. But I mean, I think I'll probably be spending my time with Zelda anyway. So, but yeah, very a lot of things. It's a lot of nice little updates that have been happening. That's just got me more excited about these kinds of things. I was listening to a podcast as I usually do, when I work and that kind of thing. Uh, the podcast is Resonant Arc. I've talked about them before. They're one of my favorite podcasts because they go in depth with, RPGs primarily, JRPGs. Right now they're talking about Xenosaga 3, which I do want to play the Xenosaga games eventually, but I'm just like, I'm just waiting for a port, Like, if I wanted to, I have a PS2, but they're gonna be like an insane price. Like, it's gonna be ridiculous. Like, I remember going to a retro game shop and seeing, I think it was Saga 2 and Saga 3 on display, and they were over like $150 each. I'm like, that's nuts. I can't do that. I can't do that. So I think right now the hope is just for those to eventually get ported. Hopefully. I'm hoping those get ported. Because I really do think, just based, I've watched gameplay of it. I've watched, playthroughs of it. And the story is great. I think the story is super fun. It is very much in line with the other Xeno games. Just the writing with and the story kind of by Takahashi is very much in line with that. So I want to play them myself, to experience it myself, but it's just not available. It's not available on modern consoles, unfortunately. So here's hoping it eventually gets ported to something, you know what I mean? They were having a kind of like a discussion about the game and the themes and that kind of thing. There was a point where they were discussing it's I here's the thing with Xeno games, with JRPGs, the games that I do really love. A lot of them are absolutely ridiculous. And I do not blame anyone from being like a little put off by some of them. Because they are ridiculous. Like, if you just sit down for a minute and just think about what is happening, like within the game, like if there's like a cutscene going on, and so just like the absolute ludicrous nature of what is going on, it is insane, and it's hard to like explain to someone like, yeah, so there's like an anime robot woman, and she's actually a reincarnation of a famous religious figure and she's fighting like a robot clone of herself while trying to protect the main character, who has amnesia because she was actually born in the past. Like, it's ridiculous, just the layers to it. If you like think about it, you just have to like sit back and be like, hold on, is this too much? It probably is, honestly. It really is. It really is too much sometimes. And you just have to take a step back, and I think sometimes we get so caught up in it because of how much we enjoy it, whether it's the characters, the music, just the whole package itself. We get so just like drawn into it that we almost turn off our brain to be like, yeah, no, this is fine. This is just kind of normal, honestly. Like, I don't even worry about it. What am I playing? No, it's just some crazy ass game. No, it's great. It's great. Like, I think you should play it. No, it's like you can't just, it's difficult to like recommend these kinds of games sometimes to people, because it's just not, it's too much. You know what I mean? There's like I was mentioning this when they announced the Trails remake, and I already kind of vented a little bit about that in terms of the just like how difficult it is to kind of get into that series. And I think it's like, if you do want to attract new fans of the series, and this really is not the fault of the publisher or the developer in Falcom. It is not really their fault. It is just kind of the way, the fever or the fervor of the fandom that exists. Like, it's just certain people that are so into the series that, and I think, it comes from a good place of wanting to, be like, dude, I want to share this part of my, like, it's like, this is like my favorite thing, and I want other people to experience it as well. And I totally get that. I really do understand that. I mean, it's kind of what I, do with this podcast is share some of my favorite things, knowing that not, like, most people are not going to, like, get into it at all. And that's fine. But it's kind of like, no, you just gotta do it. You gotta get into the Trail series. You gotta play all 14 games because they're all interconnected. And once you get to this point in the game, it's gonna be crazy. Like the revelations and like the interconnectedness of like the whole franchise. It's hard to sell people on that, and I think it's like a big reason why I will probably never get into One Piece. I think I might have said this, but it's too much. It's way too, just the quantity of everything. It's like, oh, there's like filler episodes. I'm like, dude, it doesn't matter if there are filler episodes. Like, regardless of that, there are still 1,000 episodes in the series. There are hundreds of thousands of like chapters in the manga. It is just it's too much. It's like overwhelming, you know what I mean? And I kudos to people who are really into that series. It's great. And there's like the Netflix adaptation, and season 2 apparently is like coming around. It's like, cool, man. There's people that are really into it, but it's one of those things that's like, dude, I just cannot. I can't. I'm sorry, but it's just I unless like my next lifetime, like whatever, if there's like if I get another lifetime, then maybe I will watch One Piece, but there is not enough time in my life to get into that series. You know what I mean? Unless I like somehow like play it on double X speed and and just like go right through and be like, oh yeah, I'm all caught up now. So it's just kind of like, I think it is probably easier for me because there is this remake that's going to be coming out next year for the first Trails game. It is going to be a lot easier to get into the series. Like, it's more of an incentive, obviously, for me to get into the series, and I will try out the game for sure because I've only heard good things about it. So I think, and I've heard just with conversations regarding the first trilogy in the series that you could honestly treat that as sort of its own self-contained story. Like, while it will have future connections with the other games in the series, that trilogy kind of has like an ending that kind of makes sense. So with that, I think that I could see myself, delving into the series and checking it out. And if I really do enjoy it, then it's worthwhile to try out other games, as well. I just think that with, it's difficult. It is really difficult to try to like convert new fans, because like, how do you even like approach that conversation? You know what I mean? Some people are just not gonna like it. Like, some people just don't like RPGs, and that's fine. That's fine. But if there are people out there who are interested, it is like, it feels overwhelming, and I think it is. It is overwhelming in a lot of instances. So having sort of like an entry point where it makes sense because it's the very first game in the series, and it's also first narratively, from what I understand, it's like, okay, now I know where to start. Yeah, I don't have to worry about being like, you could actually do Cold Steel. You could do the four Cold Steel games, or you could start with Trails into Reverie, which is like the 13th game in the series. It does have a self-contained story, but it does have reference, like, you know what I mean. You know what I mean. At least I know there is a beginning point, and I can just kind of go from there and see how it goes, right? If I like the first game enough, then I can get into the rest of the series as much as I would like to. You know what I mean? But it is just kind of funny. Like, it's I was saying just the ridiculous nature of some of these games, anime, whatever. Just what is happening within the story itself and what's happening in the moment, and then it's like on top of that you got all this other stuff being like, yeah, if you do this to a certain point, if you progress to a certain point in the game, or if you beat these first three games, like it's hard to like synthesize down to what makes sense to try to explain to someone to get them to be like, yeah, this might be something I might try out. You know what I mean? So it's just kind of funny thinking about that, because the games that we play are ridiculous. They're absolute. Sometimes they're absolute nonsense, and it shows, and it's fine. And sometimes you feel a little embarrassed to be playing these games and being like, yeah, that's just kind of what it is, like it's like you can't really, like, how do you explain what is happening at times, right? But that's just kind of that comes with the nature of what it is that we kind of obsess over, and you just have to take it with a grain of salt, for one. And if there are something that piques your interest, like, you just have to, I don't know, you just have to like, don't just throw the book at someone. Myself, this is like, I'm honestly kind of telling myself that when I do recommend, because like I don't know, when I do recommend something, I try to be like, with the caveat of being like, yo, listen, you might just like not, this just is not going to gel with you if you aren't familiar with this type of media already. So you have to, I don't know, it's good to provide comparisons as well if you are recommending something. I think when it comes to, I also, this kind of conversation also applies to Xenoblade as well. It does, like, it really does, and now that I think about it, I'm kind of like, maybe I'm a bit of a hypocrite for even like laying it into Trails, but like with the Xeno series, like, it's like, oh, maybe there's like the potential that some of it might be interconnected in some ways. That's very loose. That's a very loose theory, but like with just Xenoblade in general, it's like, yeah, you could play 3, but it's recommended to play through 1 and 2. You know what I mean? It's like, damn, I gotta play 2 like 50+ hour games before I get into this one. Like, it's like it's the same thing, really. You know what I mean? But I mean, I do recommend you play it through 1 at least if you don't want to play 3. It's just kind of funny that now that you think about it. It can be a lot, man. It can be a lot to ask of someone to get into something, and being like, yo, listen, there's like, you also gotta read like some manual too. There's actually a side story. Speaking of Xenosaga 3, the amount of work you have to do to keep up with what's happening in the story and understand what is happening is actually ridiculous. Like, as interested and as fascinating as the story is with that trilogy, like, there was so much other shit that you have to be aware of. There's like the cell phone games that was only released in Japan. There's like another game that was also released only in Japan. and it was only available for like a limited amount of time. It's like, what, well, how do I even like, how do you can't play it. You literally can't play it. It's not available anymore. So you can only watch like a YouTube video on these things. So it's just like, it's a lot. It's a lot. So I think that, when you do, I don't know, when you try to talk about these things with someone, when you try to recommend something, it's like, you have to be like, you know what, actually, this might not be for you. That might be the ultimate conclusion, being like, yo, listen, these are great, and I love these things, but I just can't. I'm gonna save you the time. Anyway, just thinking about these things is kind of funny. I was gonna talk about Attack on Titan. I haven't watched it in a little bit. The last episode I saw was like earlier this week. I'm like halfway through the first, not halfway through. I'm like, no, I guess I'm like halfway through the fourth season. I'm mostly through part 1 of the fourth season, right? I think that's it. It's good stuff. I'm glad I'm back with Attack on Titan. Even though I kind of knowing that there is like, the ending to this. I'm very curious to see how the story develops. Interesting twists and turns. I might watch a little bit later tonight, honestly. I think that it is pretty crazy just what this anime is and how it's gotten to the point where it is, just in terms of the timeline, the way in which they reveal certain details of the story, how significant it is to sort of go into these into this anime without having any knowledge of anything, and how that's really, it really is one of those instances where not knowing anything about this anime and the story is like beneficial, right? There is no anime like Attack on Titan, really. It just is like at a different level compared to everything else. I think both in like the art style and just like the gravity of the story, and then the weight of everything, and the themes that the that it's kind of exploring, is like a big reason. Is a big reason? Is a big reason why? Is a big reason why it has had kind of this international appeal in comparison to other anime, right? I really can't think of another anime that speaking of recommendations, kind of going back to that, this is like the only anime that I really feel like I can recommend to the majority of people without, giving some caveat like, there's some weird, like it's like anime, so just like don't, just like don't worry about like kind of the style. Like, no, there's like with this story, you could definitely feel there's kind of there's like a pretty big Western influence too. So I think that's kind of why so many people who might not be into anime latch onto it, right? And I think, yeah, there's just kind of there's like almost like an international, it's just like a widespread appeal to this story, just because of the style and the way it's told. It really does not have. I mean, there are certain, I can't think of like many tropes. There's maybe some, but I have to really think about it, right? It doesn't rely on like tropes to tell the story. It is just a grade above other stories and other anime in a lot of instances, right? If I think about some other animes where I'm like, yeah, I mean, I would recommend it, But you also have to kind of provide like a caveat and be like, listen, it's kind of, it's got some stuff. It's like, it's got like a screaming child. There's like a mascot character that screams in one episode or like several episodes, and you just have to get used to it. You'd be like, it's better to listen. It's better to watch this in sub. It's better to listen to this in Japanese because it just doesn't sound right. With English dub, there's certain jokes that just don't really land with like, English English dub. It just doesn't work. There's just something that just doesn't click with the localization, and that's fine. The translators are doing the best they can, but it just is better to watch this in Japanese. You know what I mean? It's like you have to kind of, I don't know, you have to sort of work around recommending anime if it is to someone who might not be into it, right? So it's like Attack on Titan is really the only one where I'm like, yeah, no, you should watch it because it's really good, and you don't have to worry about, I don't know, it's like you don't have to think about the style in which it's being told, because it feels very, it's just it's just consistently very good as well. Anyways, this whole conversation I've just had today has just been talking about how to recommend. This is the step by step on how to recommend something that someone might not be into if it is their first time. So this is how you do it. All right, if you want to recommend something to someone, just first ask them. I guess like what you do. This is a theoretical situation. I think you have to ask them what they already like. And then based on that, you have to think about, in your head, you have to think about whether it is worth recommending it to them or not. And if it's not, it's fine. That's just what it is. I don't know. I think it's worth trying out different things too. Like with games, I've found a lot of games that I've really enjoyed that I've never really considered trying. If it wasn't recommended by just, I don't know, some YouTube video or some post online. Like there's a lot of things out there. So I guess for those who are receiving recommendations, just try something out, and if you don't like it, it's fine. It's fine. If you don't like a certain anime, if you happen to not like I don't know, it doesn't matter. Whatever's out there is cool. But but for the people who are recommending things like a Trails or a Xenoblade, just calm down, just relax. Don't be overbearing. Oh, it's the greatest thing ever made. Yeah, for us maybe, but it's not for everybody, and that's fine. People got their tastes. People got different likes and wants, and it's great and it's beautiful for the way that is. I've been rambling for a bit. Just wanted to talk about some stuff. Yeah, I was contemplating whether I was going to record this weekend or today, but I decided to just catch up a little bit today. For this weekend, I will maybe find some time to play Unicorn Overlord. I will maybe have some time to watch some more Attack on Titan. And I'm probably going to try to go outside a little bit more and maybe go on some more walks and that kind of thing. So that is what I have planned for this weekend before going into next week. And if there is anything that pops up and anything that I find interesting, any news, any other gaming news that comes up, any announcements, I will talk about those early next week. So yeah. That's going to do it for this episode. This has been Save the Semantics, signing off.